Welcome back to No Stop Lights. I want to thank our sponsors, Micky Finn's, MPD Electric, Co-op, Schofield's, Ace Hardware, Carolina Bank, Pepsi of Florence. It's easy for me to go 1,000,000 miles an hour. It's hard for me to go 100 miles an hour. And by that, I mean it's hard to slow down and think things through and not be reactive and not be as aggressively opinionated as I am about things. Those who follow whatever it is we do here on the radio and now in the digital sphere with podcasting, I'm quick to make a judgment. I'm quick to decide that this is what the problem is. Here's what I suggest the solutions to be. When I don't know, I don't know. And I'll make it clear that I don't know. But I wouldn't classify or categorize myself as cerebral. Now I don't think I'm stupid. I'm certainly not real smart, but I don't think I'm stupid. There are some things that deserve, I don't want to say more serious consideration, but a more thoughtful effort in trying to understand the issue at hand, what the principal ideas and notions are, and where do we go from here? We to some degree, as offended as I am by political theorists, and I'm talking about the academics, the hypothetical, theoretical version of American politics, I'm guilty of that. I mean, I really and truly, when I think about what I do and what I'm compensated to do, I politically theorize. I say, here's what I think the problems with American politics are, and here's what I think some of the best answers and solutions could be. And I want to give fair warning. When you try to be cerebral after a few swallows of Celsius, 200 grams of caffeine infused to the soul, right, and in a very direct way, it's like I don't want to say it's a shot of booze, but it's similar to that. And then I've got my Pepsi, zero sugar, but once again, a certain amount of caffeine included in that. So let's hold on to this for a second. There are people who have made enormous fortunes giving opinions that I find very uninteresting. Doesn't matter what I find very uninteresting. The masses find those sorts of opinions, those sorts of pronouncements marketable. That they're interesting. Maybe, just maybe, it's because people aren't willing to give the effort it takes to understand the complexities of American politics in a way that I don't want to say I'm smarter than anybody, because I'm certainly not. But I do have a keen and genuine interest in the complexities of American politics. We got two major stories in American politics today. To me, it doesn't take much to get emotionally invested in one or the other. If you hate Trump, it's easy to believe that Trump is the most out of control president we've ever had in the White House. I mean, conformity be damned. He's not going to do things the way we've historically and traditionally done things. Those who believe in reverence and decorum and a genuine expectation of, I guess, quote unquote, presidents don't behave that way. You're bound to pile on. You're bound to find, what he did offensive and eventually criminal. You've got for the first time in American history, we've got an indictment of a former president by the federal government. The unusuality, if that's a word of this, if not, we make it up anyway. If it is, then the most unusual part of this story, it's not just so unusual that Trump is a former president being indicted for the first time in American history. It's the fact that he's the current front runner for re-election. So it's a political rival, a political foe. It's there's another ingredient in this story. But it takes some effort to start understanding the American Records Act. The Presidential Records Act, or the Espionage Act, or obstruction of justice, conspiracy. I think all of us understand classified information and declassified information. I think the majority of us understand what America's secrets don't need to be out on the web. I think we would all accept some of that. Eric Snowden and Julian Assange come to mind. It's a complicated issue if you choose to try and understand it at a greater level. But most Americans have decided before they study the Presidential Records Act or the Espionage Act, most Americans have decided because they have a genuine knee-jerk reaction. I like that guy. I don't like that guy. And then you've got Joe Biden. Now the media is not covering this story other than Fox News and conservative talk radio. You're not going to hear much about Joe Biden, whether or not he was bribed by a foreign government, a foreign national. There's a story out there, believe it or not in the mainstream. In the last 4 days, what I'd call the national media, ABC, CBS, NBC, we're not talking about print media because nobody reads that any longer. There was a day the Washington Post, the New York Times, and Wall Street Journal had influence on shaping the narrative in America, shaping the political discourse in America. Now it's all digital. CBS, ABC, NBC don't carry the weight they did, but they're still the major networks. And they're still very influential in helping shape the political debate. They've spent about 291 minutes telling the world about Trump's saga. They spent absolutely no time at all talking about Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, offshore bank accounts, LLCs, wire transfers, money changing hands. A Biden grandkid has an offshore bank account. There are 15 LLCs in the Biden's family name. Once again, back to the Presidential Records Act, the Espionage Act, Donald Trump. It's easy to decide whether you like Trump or not. It takes a little more effort to try and understand what he's charged with. And I wonder, well, I don't wonder, I don't question, I'm pretty sure that Americans don't have the seriousness it takes to give that a full review. They probably won't have the serious it takes if the story ever becomes mainstream that Joe Biden got rich peddling influence. Joe Biden got wealthy, and the Biden family got wealthy transacting in peddling influence on behalf of the American government. I've got a theory on Biden. I think Biden's always believed that the only way he was going to get wealthy was to utilize or use his political influence. Barack Obama, who Biden served as the vice president, I don't care much for Obama's ideals and principles. I don't think he was a good president at all. I look at my health care invoice every month, my health insurance invoice every month, and I'm going, the guy sucked. But I don't think anybody doubted whether or not he could make a lot of money. I mean, in the free market. Obama's a young, charismatic, articulate, transformative political figure. A lot of things going for Barack Obama where you believed he could financially benefit from life after being president. Bill Clinton would be another example of that. That these guys are very articulate, very bright. Once again, I have vehement, passionate disagreements with their idea and notions of government, but I can't deny the fact that they're marketable. I mean, Bill Clinton was a marketable person. Barack Obama's probably, in modern American history, the most marketable president in our lifetime. He was a young guy when he left office, had all the characteristics and traits of, success in the free market. And I think Joe Biden looked around and said, I've been a politician all of my life. The only way I'm ever going to live above average means is to do things I probably shouldn't do, and that is to utilize my political influence in a way that advantages my family financially. But once again, to really understand offshore bank accounts, LLCs in Biden family's name, Burisma, the Ukrainian government, the Romanian oligarch. I mean, you're going to have to spend a little time better understanding that. So let's take those two separate major political stories as we speak, and let's go to something Tucker Carlson said yesterday. Because to me, I was talking to our producer Josh earlier today before we went on the air to do this podcast. Some of the most successful people in life have the uncanny ability to not complicate things when they don't deserve complication. Let's use those two as an example. Do you like Trump or not? That's not complicated. Do you like Biden or not? That's not complicated. I mean, you can form an opinion on Donald Trump or Joe Biden in a New York minute. But if you give those two issues the consideration they deserve, it gets complicated. I mean, it gets very complicated. If you're able, and most people aren't able to do this, if you're willing, better way of saying that, if you're willing to put your political biases aside and honestly assert or assess, if you're honestly able to assess what Trump did and come to some reasonable conclusion, that there will be a multitude of answers. There will be a multitude of avenues to travel down. Same thing with Joe Biden. Tucker Carlson, in my humble opinion, or not so humble opinion, is one of the probably one of the most interesting voices to come down, and I want to be careful with this word, conservative punditry in a long time. Conservative, Tucker opines on things conservative in nature. The interesting part of Tucker, and this is where I want to get in a second, the interesting part of Tucker is his willingness to accept responsibility that he was wrong. And in his latest, I think they call it Tucker on Twitter, if I'm not mistaken, it's pretty wild. He had about 4 million viewers nightly on Fox News in the 8 o'clock time slot. He would have been batting cleanup for the force du jour in conservative politics in America today. I think the last count was 106 or 8 or 10 million views. Now, let's not overstate views. A view could be click on and listen for 10 seconds and click back off. But it's still an astounding number of views in the first and second. I think the second was somewhere around 60 or 65 million views. Elon Musk has offered up that forum to anybody of any political leaning or bias that can amass, a following. And Tucker has obviously got a large following. People care what Tucker says. Truth be told, Tucker's one of the 3 or 4 people that I give a rat's ass as to what they say about republicanism or government or, where do we go from here? Most of the other guys and ladies regurgitate things they've read on the National Review, in the Wall Street Journal, redstate.com. It's just not very interesting to me. It's just, I understand it. It's for the unserious. It's to be consumed by the unserious. But Tucker said yesterday, and we touched on this a little bit this morning. Tucker said yesterday, and I'm paraphrasing here, not very loosely, but Tucker said yesterday that the moment Donald Trump on the debate stage in 2016 said the Iraq war was a mistake, they lied to you, and they knew they were lying to you, was the day that he had to be dealt with. Now, once again, does Tucker believe that with every fiber of his being? You have to ask Tucker. I don't know. I don't think Tucker says things he doesn't mean or believe, but Tucker does what I do. Tucker has to combine some degree of entertainment, provocateur, to garner an audience, to gain a response, to be relevant in the world of opinion giving and punditry. But when Tucker says that the reason Donald Trump has been investigated, has been impeached, has been indicted, has been arraigned, will eventually be tried for crimes including mishandling classified information, everybody does it. Everybody has done it. If I'm Trump, that would be my defense on, Clinton set the precedent. Bush set the precedent. Obama set the precedent. Sure, I mishandled classified information. Who didn't? At least I'm a former president mishandling classified information. I'm not a former Secretary of State. I'm not a former vice president. I didn't have them in a garage with a Corvette. The double standard would be clearly the best avenue to make that argument. I don't believe for a second that Trump could be found guilty of the Espionage Act, because I don't think Trump for a second can be accused of being unpatriotic. He could be accused of being a horse's ass and narcissistic and a lot of other things, but you're going to have a hard time convincing, I think, 12 jurors, that Donald Trump is treasonous or a traitor and would sail the country down the river. I just don't buy into that. And I think the Espionage Act, there'll be some debate about what, once again, the complexities of what that law means. But, my interpretation, willfully or intentionally harm the United States of America. If Donald Trump had top secret defense-related material and that information got in the hands of a foreign government agency or a member of the media, and Trump personally gained, and there was willful intent there, I would talk about grossly negligent. It's kind of interesting. When Comey basically admitted that Hillary Clinton committed a crime, he said, but she inadvertently did it. It was grossly negligent. There's no doubt she broke the law, but she didn't intentionally nor willfully. Trump's probably as grossly negligent as as any president we've had, and I mean that in a complimentary fashion. He's, he doesn't have a bug up his butt about, the way bureaucracies and government agencies wish to do things. But let's go back to the macro of all macros. I mean, if Trump is the centerpiece, if Trump is the conversation of modern day politics, there's no doubt about it. Who is the most dominant force in American politics today? Donald Trump. Ron DeSantis is a very credible and worthy foe. I think DeSantis will eventually close the gap in the Republican primary between Donald Trump and DeSantis. But it's all about, Chris Christie's running against Trump. DeSantis is running as an alternative to Trump. The media says anybody but Trump. And there's kind of an evolution. The establishment Republican eventually turns into a never-Trumper. The never-Trumper eventually turns into a Democrat. And the former establishment Republican turned never-Trumper turned Democrat ends up on CNN or MSNBC. That's the evolution. That's the way this thing plays out. So eventually Chris Christie will probably end up, a pundit on ABC, NBC, CBS. Well, I think he's already had a gig at ABC News on the George Stephanopoulos show. That's the unbiased anchor of This Week, formerly of David Brinkley. So the former Clinton communications director is now the unbiased anchor of CBS News. Okay, I get it. Anyway, that may explain the 291 minutes of covering Trump and the 0 minutes of covering Joe Biden. But I want to go back to Tucker, because Tucker doesn't say. Tucker really tries to explain. He tries to go back in the beginning, Genesis 1:1. Why did the left not hate nor despise Donald Trump? In fact, he was a bit celebrated. He was an open-minded business guy, from Queens. His father was a marginal real estate developer, slumlord. He goes over to Manhattan. He builds buildings. He puts his name on it. He's brash. He's bold. He's narcissistic. He's egotistical. He's irreverent. He's a lot of things to a lot of different people, but he was not a threat to democracy. He was never considered a threat to democracy. I've heard Donald Trump called a lot of things. I've never heard Donald Trump called a threat to democracy. When Oprah Winfrey interviewed him, or whomever. The media, he was kind of a media darling. You're fired. The Apprentice was a highly rated NBC weekly show. But and Tucker makes the argument that the day Donald Trump said that they lied to you about Iraq and enough of these stupid wars, enough of these crazy wars, was the day that the body politic, the powerful people in powerful places, had to deal with him in a very different sort of way. And it's the reason he's been impeached. It's the reason he's been attacked. It's the reason he's been indicted. It's the reason he's been arraigned. It's the reason we'll have one of the most high-profile political / celebrity cases in the history of mankind, because Trump is a celebrity. There's no question about it. Someone asked me a while back, is he a bigger politician than celebrity? Good question. I don't know. I don't have any idea. I can't imagine a leading role in a movie or sitcom or a weekly show bigger than the American presidency. If you've got the top-rated show on television, you still don't get to work in the Oval Office. You don't get to reside in the White House. So I think breaking through those barriers. But the point I want to make is this. Once again, you've got a simple opinion of Trump. You've got a simple opinion of Biden. There are complications as you try to find out more about Biden, find out more about Trump and these two stories. Tucker is saying forget that. When it comes to Trump, don't remember but one thing, because this is all that matters. Forget Mar-a-Lago. Forget, classified information. Forget moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. Forget securing the border. Forget some of the crazy things he said that he didn't do. Forget some of the things that he said he would do and did do. And I think on average, Trump's presidency was successful. I don't think there's any question. When you look at Donald Trump's presidency, there's a lot there that conservatives should be proud of. But Tucker really tries to say, hey, guys, there are 100 things to discuss. There are 100 things to debate. But at the end of the day, when Donald Trump was perceived to be a legitimate threat to the military-industrial complex that Eisenhower warned us about, was the day that he had to be dealt with very differently. And I went back and looked at some data. And there are four line items in our budget at about $1 trillion. I mean, our federal budget is about $6.4 trillion. We're raising about $5.5 trillion. We're spending about $1 trillion we don't have. I mean, for argument's sake, $1 trillion is 1,000 billion. A billion is 1,000 million. So we're talking about $1,000 million. There are four line items: Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and defense spending that consume, 75% of our budget. And then you've got debt service. I mean, we're not paying off debt. We're simply servicing the debt. When we refinance at newer and higher rates, that number will creep closer to $1 trillion. Rand Paul talks a lot about that. Former Governor of South Carolina, Mark Sanford, talks a lot about that. The debt hawk, the deficit hawk, is fewer and far between than they've ever been in the Republican Party. But when you look at Medicare, I mean, with clarity, we understand. I mean, we understand who gets the Medicare money, right? I mean, it goes to the healthcare community. I mean, I would imagine if it run by the private sector, we could do it better and more efficient and cheaper and get better outcomes. But the government is it's the only entity, I guess, that could facilitate what needs to be done in regards to that. Medicaid is growing really and truly probably faster as we speak. Maybe not today, because so many people, I take 10,000 people daily are turning 65 years old, becoming Medicare eligible. When the Obamacare legislation passed, it was praised as insuring, hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people who didn't have insurance. All it did was place those people on the rolls of Medicaid. I mean, it's government subsidized health care. It's not like somebody, hey, I understand that there's this new program out and I need to find out more. I've got my checkbook in my pocket. I don't have health care. I'm ready to pay a premium. No, it's government subsidized. I mean, it was free health care is what it was. And it placed more and more people on the rolls of Medicaid. And then you've got Social Security. It's an entitlement plan. I mean, I understand the argument is, well, I paid in. It's not an entitlement. It is an entitlement plan. You paid in, and you're entitled to receive a benefit from that investment you made into the government. But those are social welfare plans. And we can debate the size and scope. We can argue about we're spending too much money on Medicare. We need to raise the retirement age. We need to some requalifiers on Medicaid. Those are legitimate ideological debates about what government should or should not do. But the military-industrial complex budget this year, and I understand that 3% of GDP, 3.5% of GDP, that's a percentage of GDP. It's still $886 billion annually that we invest in the American military-industrial complex. And I went back and read a lot of what Eisenhower said in his farewell address when he warned about the military-industrial complex. I looked at the 10 wealthiest counties in America. I mean, I just Googled 10 wealthiest counties in America. Silicon Valley, you would expect that, right? Upper West Side of Manhattan, you would expect that. I mean, there have been enormous fortunes, won and lost, in Silicon Valley with this technology boom and Wall Street. I mean, you would expect Wall Street to be a place where people are motivated to make a lot of money, and report a lot of income. There's nothing surprising. In fact, I believe America at its best is when Silicon Valley is the most affluent population, the risk takers, the technological advances that we've made, and the way we communicate one another, and the way we, I'm thinking about Apple Watches, and I'm thinking about these crazy devices that I've got in my hand, the screen I'm looking at. I mean, all those are directly and indirectly byproducts of Silicon Valley and the great technological advances we made. I mean, obviously, communicating the way we do is not just all. I mean, some of the technology from electric vehicles was born out of Silicon Valley. Wall Street, once again, investment in BlackRock and Vanguard and Goldman Sachs and the others. I mean, they're motivated by profit. But the question I'd pose for us, and I think this is where Tucker is really trying to get at. If 5 of the 10 wealthiest counties, most affluent counties in America, are Loudoun, Virginia, Falls Church, Virginia, Fairfax County, Virginia, Howard County, Maryland, Arlington County, Virginia, what's so special about those 5 counties? I mean, I think we all understand what's unique about Silicon Valley, what's unique about Wall Street, what's unique about some of the commerce centers in America. What's so damn special about Loudon, Virginia? Why are people in Loudon, Virginia doing so much better than the average American? Why are people in Falls Church, Virginia doing so much better than the average American? Fairfax County, Howard County, Arlington County, the average income of a taxpayer in those 5 counties is somewhere in the neighborhood of $120,000. That's about 2.35 times more than the national average. Why is that? Well, once again, I think we all understand that the free market, capitalism. Yeah, man. I mean, I get it. The really bright, motivated people in Silicon Valley. I mean, they're going to naturally make more money in a free market economy driven by capitalism or the animal instincts of the primitive animal instincts of capitalism. But why are those 5 counties so affluent? Are those 5 counties so affluent because we disperse about $1 trillion a year to Medicare? Are those 5 counties that affluent because we disperse about $1 trillion a year to Medicaid, to Social Security, debt service? I mean, who's getting rich off debt service? I mean, the financiers, the financialization of our economy. The Fed buys the debt. Wall Street finances some of it. It's intricate. It's complicated. But imagine if you are one that depends on the existence of the military-industrial complex. I mean, how many people in these 5 counties? I don't know the answer to this, but I think that's the question Tucker's asking. If you're associated or affiliated with the defense contractor and you're living in Loudon, Virginia, you're living in Falls Church, Virginia, you're living in Fairfax, Virginia, you're living in Howard County, Maryland, you're living in Arlington County, Virginia, you're making 2.5 times the average income. And along comes this guy that says, these wars are crazy. I mean, these wars are senseless. The Middle East is less stable today. How many potential countries could be an existential threat to American safety and security? Who's keeping the tabs in Ukraine? I mean, we're spending another billion and another billion and another billion and another billion, and it goes to Ukraine. I mean, it's taxpayer dollars. It's taxpayer and borrowed dollars is what it is. But who is keeping the tab? Who's keeping accounting of what they're doing with the money that we send to Kiev? And I just think that we're nearing, and I like to say this because it's a bit provocative, and I think it's accurate. Neoconservatism has failed the average American. The military-industrial complex has failed the average American. Interventionism in general has failed the average American, and many Americans are now coming to grips with this reality that they have been a believer in this investment we make in our military because the world's a dangerous place and America has to lead. America has to take center stage. When you proclaim that, it sounds reasonable. I mean, say this out loud. The world is a dangerous place, and America must make enormous investments in making sure the world is safer. And whether we like it or not, we've accepted and embraced the responsibility of keeping order in the world. I mean, how many times have you heard this? America can't afford to be the world's police. But we have. I mean, we really and truly, it's been a quite expensive tab, but that's what we've done. As much as we say to ourselves, we can't afford to be the world's police. We've done it year after year after year after year. And I've said this on the podcast before, and I'll say it again. I learned in politics very early on that money's the answer. Now what's the question? And I think when you question why Donald Trump has been so persecuted, why, I mean, okay, he's an outlandish American president. Bill Clinton left semen stains on a blue dress. Pretty damn outlandish, isn't it? I mean, in all honesty, let's go through some of the characteristics of American presidents. How many of those folks haven't been pretty outlandish, to be honest with you? But Donald Trump did something that is so forbidden. Forget taboo. This is forbidden. he challenged the military-industrial complex. He challenged the notion of American imperialism. And, you know, some out there in America First land refer to America now as an empire in decline. I mean, I've never referred to my home nation as an empire, but I think you've got to really begin to consider what Tucker said, that there is a central issue that motivated so many people to destroy Donald Trump and his presidency. And it was not about keeping the world a safer place. It was not about national security. It was not about having more Tomahawk missiles than the next nation. It was not about having a better equipped Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine. It was about these 5 counties where people live who were directly affiliated or associated with this ginormous government expenditure. I mean, imagine this, guys. We said a second ago, $1 trillion is 1,000 billion. $1 billion is 1,000 million. And every year, the government makes an investment of somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 trillion in the military-industrial complex in the name of neoconservatism. I'm a Republican. I'm a convert. For most of my life, being aware, I mean, I didn't register to vote until I was 40, ran for office at 40, I got elected county council, got elected lieutenant governor. And if you'd asked me, hey, what camp do you fall in? I said, I'm a conservative. No, a little more specific. I'm a neocon. I mean, I do believe that America has a responsibility, whatever it costs, to make the world a better place, to keep the world a safer place. But I'm beginning to believe now that the $1 trillion a year is not about making the world a better place. It's not about making America a safer place. Do I believe national security is important? Of course I do. Do I believe there are dangers around the world? Yes. Do I believe that that there's a mindset in the Middle East that wishes to cause America harm? Yeah. Do I believe that communism in Russia is a threat to American safety and security? Yeah. Communism in China. Do I believe we have to always be aware and on guard about the threats, the existential threats, the real ones, not Trump? I'm talking about the real existential threats to America, safety and security, the China, the Russia. But I think we've also got to accept that when someone came along and challenged the status quo and how much money we spend in the name, and once again, I don't buy this. I think it's all about money. And I think Loudon, Virginia is full of people who have benefited far more than we can imagine in the name of defense spending. I think Falls Church, Virginia, Fairfax County, Virginia, Howard County, Maryland, Arlington County, Virginia. Maybe these people believe they're doing God's work. But maybe they believe that they're sincerely dedicating themselves to a career that advances humankind in a peaceful and meaningful way. But you've also got to accept that there's kind of a revolving door here. You got defense contractors, you got consultants, you got lobbyists, you got candidates for office, you got think tanks, you got websites, you got other think tanks, and it's just how much of that money stirs around, and how much benefit does America really gain from spending $1 trillion a year in the name of national defense? I guess the question I'm posing, and I don't think Trump's a pacifist. I know I'm not. I don't think Tucker is a pacifist. But I think a lot of Republicans are waking up to the stark reality that the military-industrial complex and neoconservatism in general is more about who gets rich, what defense contractor gets the bid, how many consultants and lobbyists were involved, how many bonuses do they get for promoting not safety and security, but American imperialism. And you've got an issue with Biden that's an important issue, a serious issue. Was he or was he not bribed? You've got a trial coming with a former president, current frontrunner in the Republican Party. And I think you've got to ask yourself, where is the point of contention? I mean, where's the epicenter of the fault line? Where did all this begin? When Trump shows up in 2016 and became the most unconventional candidate of my lifetime, when and who made their minds up that he couldn't be president the first time, and he damn sure can't be president the second time? And I think Tucker's over the target. I mean, I really think Tucker is, when Tucker says that Trump is an anti-war president, he's an anti-defense spending because I don't think they perceive war. I think they perceive defense spending. And I'd love to be in an industry that was guaranteed every budget $1 trillion is coming your way. I mean, imagine that, guys. I mean, imagine if you are an employee of an industry or a sector of the economy that you know every year, they're not arguing about whether you get $200 billion or $400 billion. They're arguing about whether you get $800 billion, 3% of GDP, or $1 trillion, 4.5% of GDP. Pretty damn good business to be in. And I think we are beginning as a party to evolve. I like to say, will the last neocon turn the lights off? I am for a political movement that makes as its priority the American worker, the American family, and the American way of life. And I think those are fundamentally in opposition to what the American military-industrial complex. I think it's about power, influence, greed, controlling the world, exporting imperialism, forcing people to behave as American leadership desires them to behave, and that ain't what I signed up for. I want to thank our sponsors. Carolina Bank serves communities throughout northeastern South Carolina, offering a wide range of services to meet every personal or business need, from straightforward accounts to complex finances. They're prepared to help you reach your financial goals. Carolina Bank, banking on tradition since 1936. Member FDIC. Schofield's Ace Hardware, your one-stop shop for all hardware, paint and lawn and garden needs, plus all things sporting goods, including firearms, safes, clothing, footwear, and more. Pepsi of Florence represent the entire product line of PepsiCo, one of the world's leading food and beverage companies. Pepsi of Florence also serve brands from other great companies such as Dr. Pepper, Canada Dry, Lipton Tea, Gatorade, and various regional brands. Micky Finn's largest South Carolina liquor wholesaler, serving every county in the state, largest bourbon selection statewide. They ship wines to 43 states, opening soon a new beverage warehouse across from Buc-ee's on I-95 in Florence. They support USC athletics, including Williams-Brice and Colonial Life Arena. Marlboro PD Electric Co-op. If you're in big business and looking for an industrial park in the South to build your new plant, consider Marlboro PD Electric Co-op's new PD Commerce Center, an industrial park located at the I-95 exit in Florence, South Carolina. Check it out at MPDC Co-op or PDEC.com.